Hello everybody, I wanted to talk about the military and why I joined, and then give anybody who is thinking about joining and that will be going soon some pointers or some tips to help you, especially through basic training and then some of your early time or deployment times. So I did have dreams, so that's always part of it, right, with me. So, and I absolutely believe that, not every dream is from God, but that God does communicate with us through dreams. And I usually couldn't tell the difference. But when I had these dreams, I didn't know what to make of them until I was in the military and began to characterize my experience. And I remembered probably God brought these dreams back to my mind to help me understand that, yes, I can communicate with you through dreams, and this is part of your life. This is part of your story. So these dreams that I would have were that I couldn't graduate high school, and I was trapped in this nightmare high school. And I just could never graduate. I could never get the diploma, and I kept going and I would get good grades, but I could never graduate or get like the honors or the credit. And I was always a failure. And not only that, but the high school was a nightmare. Like, there were bullies, and it was just a really bad place to be. And that's really what the military is and was for me. A lot of bullies and a lot of unfairness. So, but it was something. My dad, as a veteran, he served during Vietnam, and I think he was drafted or was about to be drafted. And he served in the Middle East, and that's where he met my mom. And so I am half Middle Eastern. My mom is from Syria. So when I was in the military, I did get a lot of garbage from people. If they were black, they hated me because I was white. If they were Hispanic, they hated me because I was white. Or white people thought I was Hispanic or something else, so they hated me. I actually had a woman that was white call me colored. And even in where I grew up, I faced a lot of racism because people thought I was Hispanic. Or my mother, she looks Hispanic, I guess. And when I went to Spain, and that's where I went when I was in Europe, not the whole time, but part of my experience there, a lot of people thought I was from Spain, and they would speak to me in Spanish, which is fine. Like, they're actually white. So, not that's good or bad, just that's what it is. So, anyway, back to the military. But a lot of the people in the military there's just a lot of racism. So it's kind of like being in prison. So people like go to people that look like them, and they get into their little groups, and they think that people that look like them are the people that they can trust. So I would even have friends, but when it wasn't convenient for them, then suddenly they would switch to the other side. Like, I had some really good friends that were black. They were really, really dark. But unfortunately, like, when it was no longer convenient to be my friend because all the group of them, like, then they would betray me, or, it was no longer convenient to be friends with a white person. So that was really hard for me, because I cared a lot about them. And when you care about people, you make sacrifices. So when they like just turn on you like that, especially when you depend on them and like as a friend, it was really hard for me. So there were a lot of things like that where it just leave you feeling really alone. And so people are really base in their thinking. They are immature, grown women in their late 30s, jealous. They act like teenagers, they act like prostitutes, some of them. Like one of the drill sergeants we had came on the weekend dressed like a prostitute. She looked like she was going out on the corner. Had her nails done, and even though it's against regulation, like all kinds of bad example. So, but when you're white, and especially if you're pretty, no matter what color you are, if you're pretty, you have to obey the rules. The rules always apply to you, even when they don't apply to others, because they hate you. And they think that you, and I've heard this from even like reputable people, but I don't feel like this, like I'm in my car, so I don't see how this is like true. I don't feel that I have had like extra advantage over people. Even if I have even if somebody might think I'm pretty. I've also had people think I'm ugly. So like when I walk into a room and the whole group of women in there like pull out their knives, like I fail to see how that they're justified in this. So it's, I don't know. Military is a really mixed up place with people who allow their evil side to really go wild, and they will kill you because of jealousy. It's like insane. But I have a few tips for you, like if you just have like a burning desire to do it. So I don't want to tell you like my story really, because I would probably get really mad, and that will be a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But it was something that I always had an interest in doing, but never did because I had children at a very young age and was married, and then my husband forbid it. But growing up, my dad was a policeman and my mom was a nurse, and I always believed in serving my country and my community, as well as my church teaches such things, that service is needful and necessary part of your life. And so I was volunteering at the VA in my community, and the veterans that I met there, the way that the type of people that I had met, like not all veterans are like this, but maybe God had caused me to meet these people, but I was so impressed with the things that they had learned from their experiences that they did inspire me that way to take that step forward. I also wanted to help not only the ones at the VA, but other people in active duty that I had read about that needed help. And so I wanted to be a medic, and I had hoped to be a doctor eventually. Of course, none of that ever happened. I did become a medic, but so the Army is an interesting place, but because with the medical, the vocabulary is more advanced, it's very difficult for people who are not, that English is not a first language for them, to get through the medical, the medic training. So I had friends actually failed out because they struggled so much with the language, which is understandable. So what that meant, though, is when I got to my unit, that it lacked diversity. And they were very young and very immature, most of them. And not to say that there wasn't diversity. There was some. In fact, one of the platoon leaders, not an officer, but a sergeant first class, he was Hispanic. And English, I think, was a second language to him, but he was racist. And helped the other Hispanic and then a white man like systematically try, and they demoted me almost right away and try and get me out of the platoon, out of the Army. And then another one, a woman, when I was switched to another platoon, which was I became like Radar O'Reilly because I have a degree in English and I'm good with office stuff. And so my commander and first sergeant put me to work in their office. And that's what I did. And I had a lot of experience with that type of thing. It's actually, incidentally, what my dad did when he was in the Army. He worked for a commander, but I think high ranking, more of the brigade level. This was company level and company battalion level. And so, and my dad, on the policeman side, also did a lot of administrative work. So anyway, because I was valuable that way, I think that if you can make yourself valuable in some way, they don't like get rid of you. So always try and make yourself useful. And anyway, so those are those few thoughts on that. You know, when you're in basic training, like when you first get there, like they're going to yell at you just like you see on TV, right? And so the Army has basic training and the Navy has boot camp. And I think it's the Navy that does boot camp. I don't know what the Marines call theirs. But that's what their job is to do, is to scare you. And initially when they first started like basic training with the Army, their goal was to, and none of them know this, you have to go read about this in like some history books that I've read, in law enforcement that I read. The goal was to try and prepare recruits for war. That was to teach them that if they could survive 8 weeks of hatred, they could survive war, and they would know that if they got through that, they can get through the war, and it's like going through darkness, that there's light at the end of the tunnel type of thing. But now it just mostly teaches recruits that not to be stronger, but that this is the Army. The Army is just filled with hatred and prejudice and anger. So you fly into the city and you're taken by a shuttle and dropped off at a place, and then you get picked up by a bus. But the bus takes you to another location that is just a drop-off location where they prepare you to then go to basic training. So you could be there from like 1 to 4 weeks to prepare for training, but you get your immunizations there, and all your paperwork has to be in order before you can go to basic training. So from there, then you get on the bus and they do the workup of the drill sergeants, which they have their cool hat, you know, looks more like Smokey the Bear, but that's okay. But a lot of them are infantry. They come from the infantry side, except for the women. And one of the women in my group, she was supply, and I respected her. She was a very strong woman, but she hated my guts, and I didn't like that because I didn't feel she was fair with me. Like, if you're going to hate, just hate everybody the same and, like, be fair. You were not fair with me. And then she left early, and I actually rolled my ankle, so I was only able to do part of it, but I did everything that was required. And so at the end, she came back and treated me like garbage. But, so the men, like, you have to really kind of watch out, especially if you're female. If you're vulnerable in any way, like, if they see that you're not getting letters from home, which I did not get letters from home. I think I got one from my aunt. Love you, aunt. And, but if you're pretty much alone, like, they know that when somebody is a, what do you call, someone that just likes to prey on innocent people. I'm not totally innocent, of course, but when they prey on vulnerable people, they know what to look for, and that's you being alone. And then most of the people that come were young, a lot younger than I was, and so it wasn't like I readily identified with them. But then you're just kind of in this place, and you're all being yelled at. I was shark attacked, which no one else was shark attacked. I was the only one. There were 4 to 5 drill sergeants yelling at me at one time in front of everyone. And that was the worst experience ever. And then I had a drill sergeant trying to get me into bed with him, making out with me in the first sergeant's office on the night watch. When I told him no for the hotel on family day, because of course I don't have a family, right? Coming, like, he got really mad. But he was seeing his platoon sergeant, or his platoon leader as well, who these people are not, none of us are officers. This young lady right under his command. I was not right under his command. 20 years, at least 25 years younger. Yeah. I don't know everything that he and she were doing, and he was married. So they do this like every cycle. That's what these guys do, prey upon women that are vulnerable. So if you're a woman, you need to, like, not do that. Because then and then they threaten you that you're the one that's going to be punished. And so you don't dare talk about it, right? So, because it's not the drill sergeant that gets punished, you are. And so I didn't dare speak about it, especially when it came to everybody's attention that this girl was in trouble. There was no way I was talking about it, because for me it meant going back onto the street, and I had no future. So I was hoping that the Army would work for me. But when it comes to, like, some preparation, some things that would be helpful for you when you go on ruck marches, I didn't have any of these things, but later on I've figured out some of these things. Ruck marches hurt a lot of people's feet and can disable you for good. One of my friends would get huge blisters on the bottom of her feet, and she missed out on a lot of stuff. So ruck marches are required. Like, there's certain amounts that you cannot graduate without them. And then, but what I recommend is to wear, like, nylons, like the knee-high nylons, or to get some compression stockings. Compression stockings are expensive, like $20 a pair. Anything that you can't have anything, do not stick anything to your feet except for this, what I'm going to show you. These are called Always pads, and I'd heard people talk about it, but I never understood what they were talking about because I couldn't figure out how they got them to stick. And anything I had tried didn't work. It just made my feet hurt more. But I used some of these things, like, especially when I was deployed, like, you're on your feet at least 15 hours a day or more, and you don't ever get breaks. When I was deployed, 7 days a week we were working, never a break. So you have to really protect your feet. Always wear shower shoes because you're always in public showers. And I always used the lotion to prevent getting athlete's foot. And it's cheap. You can buy it from the dollar store, but if you can't, like, pay the money for it, because you always want to be using that. And even the powder, you can get the powder from the medics and the lotion from the medics for free. You don't have to pay for any of that. So I happen to have one of the pads that I use, and you can't go cheap on these pads. So they're the women's panty liners. Okay, so guys, I don't know, like, if you can do it, but it might save the back of your feet. So only on the back of your feet can you wear these. Do not put them on the bottom of your feet. That will not work. Anything sticky will not work on the bottom of your feet. And if anything bunches up on your toes, that will cause a blister. So, like, it has to be really thin. So, like, a thin nylon. Seriously, lots of people have to go to the office, to the doctors to get their feet worked on, or they end up back over to the place where you start and you have to redo the cycle. You don't want to do that. So this is what it looks like. It's blue. I don't know if you can see it. It's just blue Always pad. Just one of the thin panty liners. Light Days thin panty liners. And you just want to open it up and put it on the back of your foot, your heel. Just like this. I'm not going to show you, like, but you want to wrap it around your heel. I usually, because they're so expensive, and they're not like, because when I use them every day, I would cut them in half, and then and just put it, because you don't need the whole thing, just put that on the back of my heel. But if you're bigger, you might need the whole thing, I don't know. But these always stayed on, they didn't come off, and they didn't blister my feet like others. Others just didn't work. Nothing else worked. I tried other pads that were cheaper and they never worked. But these, whatever the way the glue is or whatever, it works the best. And it I don't know, soaks in the moisture. But then you want to use 2 socks when you're doing the ruck marches, and then you want to do heel toe when you're walking. If you don't, you will get blisters and you will be sad. So 2 socks, and you don't want to use the socks that are dress socks. These are really thin too, but they're not tight enough, and they'll be too thick to wear with your boots, because your boot socks are really thick as well. And you can't wear like tennis shoe socks or running socks, because they're also too thick. So you really, especially depending on where you go, it may be way too hot. You really want to get some nylons, which are typically pretty affordable. Something that's going to compress your feet as well, because your feet will swell. And when you get swelling, then you can't get healing. Swelling prevents healing, and when you're doing a lot of workout like you will in training, it stretches the muscles, which causes swelling. And so